We need to consider the differences between products and services. Products are tangible, they're visible, we can see them, they have size, shape, weight, colour, and very often they are homogeneous, they are identically the same. Even if a motor car might be the same manufacturer, the same model, different shades of colour on the outside of the car, but the interior in effect is the same. So products are fairly obvious and straightforward, and you recognise them fairly easily. But services are very different. Services, for example, are intangible, invisible. They are perishable. They do not last indefinitely. They are inseparable, and they are not homogeneous, but they are heterogeneous. So let's go through those. Intangibility, you cannot see a service. You can only benefit from having made use of it. Perishable, well, it may be that a theatre in London has a show tonight and it has an audience opportunity for 2,000 people. But if 100 seats are not sold, that performance will go ahead with those 100 seats empty. And once that performance is over, those seats can never be sold again for that particular performance. So that has perished. That opportunity to sell those seats to earn money has been lost. And again, that's very similar with, for example, an airline. If an aircraft flies off from London Heathrow to New York, and that aircraft is not entirely full, it's only at 88% occupancy, 12% of the seats are unsold, then for that particular flight, those seats, of course, can never be sold again. Inseparability, well, a service is linked with a product. It very often envelops a product. McDonald's are an example. McDonald's provide burgers and fries and drinks, but in actual fact, they are offering a fast food service. People go into their outlet and they obtain these products, they buy them, but they are surrounded by the service, which is fast food, to get those people into the store, to join the queue at lunchtime, to get to the front of the queue, to give their order, to receive their items that they have ordered, their food and drink, and to pay for that and be out of that store within 2 to 3 minutes. Fast food service. And heterogeneity means that it will not be the same. It will be variable, it will differ. An example I'll give you is this, that it may be that one evening next week, I may go to a restaurant in London, an Italian restaurant, a Greek restaurant, it doesn't really matter, and perhaps a Friday of next week. I'll go there, I'll have booked in advance, I'll be meeting friends there, we'll sit at a table, 3 or 4 of us, we will have a meal, the restaurant will be fairly full, it'll be lively talk and banter and excitement. Later on there might be live music playing. The service will be good and quick, and the food will be excellent. And we will pay for that and we'll go away having enjoyed the experience. We've enjoyed the service that's been provided. But I may recommend it to a friend a few weeks later, and they may go to the same restaurant 2 or 3 weeks later, perhaps on a Tuesday night. It's a night when it's very quiet, hardly any tables in use, hardly any people there. The usual waitress is not on duty, it's someone else filling in for the evening who is much slower and doesn't know the menu particularly well. It might be the chef's night off. A replacement chef might be there, and the food may not be cooked to the same standard, the same quality. As it's a Tuesday night, there may be no live music as there was on the Friday. And so therefore that person and those people who are with that person, they will have a very different experience of the same restaurant. And indeed, possibly, they'll have paid a similar amount of money for their food. So you can see that this area of service is much more difficult to organise, and it's much likely to be variable compared to a product, very much likely to be inconsistent, unless all people involved have been trained appropriately. The waitress and the replacement waitress, the chef and the reserve chef. And unless they're trained to the same standard, then the standard of service you receive will, of course, not be the same, and it will vary over time. So I've given the example of service where a restaurant is concerned. We could also consider a hotel. Again, different standards of service because hotel staff come and go to a hotel. Many of them do not stay indefinitely, and therefore that could lead to differing standards again. Airlines. Airlines are a good example. I mentioned one that has a very good reputation within the United States. This is an airline that is involved in internal flights within the USA. It does not fly internationally. And that airline is called Southwest Airlines, and it's famous because it's known as the customer's airline. The customer's airline. They say there are many key points to their success, and they are as follows. One is lower fares. Two is simplification, easy to book. The third is efficiency. They're very efficient in dealing with their customers and dealing with their luggage. For the use of new technology, the latest technology, when it comes about, they always buy that in to use in the company. 5 is convenience, a very convenient aircraft to use for many reasons, and particularly the range of different flights they offer. 6 is a focus on customers, putting the customer first, putting the customer at the centre of their thinking. And the 7th one is employee relationships. They look after their employees. In fact, they call them internal customers. That's how they treat them. They treat them as if they are very important to them. Other examples of service would involve banking, insurance, and indeed education. All of these are invisibles, but they do have to be delivered, and they have to be delivered to a standard that is perceived to be satisfactory by the customer, the consumer, indeed the person who's actually paying for those services. I'll now give you some examples of good marketing. I mentioned earlier on Apple. They're a company that was highly successful in the 1980s and the early 1990s with their computers. The founder of the company left. He set up another company, Pixar actually, a very famous company in the film industry. But later on, the company's profits were falling and the company was getting into quite serious financial situations. They did ask the founder of the company to return. He decided to do so. He said he would do so if he was paid a fee per annum, an annual pay of $1. That's all he was going to take from the company, $1 a year, because he was so wealthy from his work at Pixar. He wanted the company that he founded to survive. He wanted to be involved in rebuilding that company. So he rejoined the company. They spent time in research and development, internal. Most of what they do is internal. They do not necessarily go out to the customer, but consumer to find out what they want. But they look at the market carefully. They look to design superior versions of existing products primarily. I've mentioned iPod that they've introduced successfully, iPhone, and of course the iPad. But of course when they introduce those products, they don't stay with them. They begin to develop them further to introduce other versions. There are now many, many different versions of the iPod. And of course, very recently in the UK, they introduced a white iPhone, primarily aimed at women, I understand. Indeed, the iPad, which is very successful, again, wasn't introduced by them. Amazon introduced Kindle, and that was in existence even before the iPad. But it's Apple who've successfully marketed their product to gain tremendous growth in sales on a worldwide basis. Another successful area as an example for good marketing would be a British company, Dyson. Dyson make vacuum cleaners, and the owner, Sir James Dyson, has been very, very successful. He introduced a product with what's called a unique selling point, a point of difference, different to any of the vacuum cleaners already on the market, being produced by Hoover and Electrolux and other companies. He introduced a vacuum cleaner that was bagless. It did not have bags to be fitted in before usage and to be taken out after usage, and it was such a problem to Mrs. Average Housewife. So he introduced this product and it's been highly successful. Indeed, more recently he went into the Japanese market. Japanese people traditionally are not as tall as people in the UK or in Europe, and he introduced a version for that market that was smaller, lighter, and it is now the market leader in Japan. Tremendously successful product in that country. Again, he's introduced other versions. There is one that can be used inside people's motor cars. If you want to clean the inside of your car, you can buy a mini Dyson vacuum cleaner for that purpose. So just a few examples of good marketing. The iPod, the iPhone, the iPad, and the Dyson vacuum cleaner. Need to balance that with a few examples of very poor marketing. Famous one historically was the Ford car known as the Ford Edsel, E-D-S-E-L. This car was introduced onto the market as a result of research, but it was a car that was built to attempt to satisfy everyone. This is not possible in marketing. Indeed, it did not satisfy one single market. The research took place. They did not segment the market. They decided they would build a car that was quite large for families, that could take a great deal of luggage and would be relatively fast, very speedy from a standing start. Clearly, the people who wanted a very fast car wouldn't choose this car because it wouldn't be as fast as they would want. And the people who wanted a large car for family or for luggage would choose another car because they didn't really need a fast car for that. They needed a car that was large and roomy, comfortable, and could take a great deal of luggage. So this vehicle that was introduced onto the market fell between several different stools. Different groups in the population wanted different things from cars, motor cars on the market. They tried to produce one car that was suitable for all. It was insufficiently suitable for any one segment of the market. And despite millions being spent on research and development and launching it, then they spent even more millions by bringing famous people onto commercials on television, famous actors and actresses from Hollywood, famous people who were singers in that country. They spent more money afterwards, so good money after bad, and people still refused to buy the product, and it had to be discontinued on the market. Very sad story, because Edsel was the name of the son of the Henry Ford who was owning the company at that particular time. Another example, back in time, not recent, but one that proves the point, the videotape machine. There were two types of system in existence. One was VHS and one was Betamax. The better product was Betamax, but that was very poorly marketed. The one that was successful, that sold in great quantity, was the VHS version. People switched to that because the marketing appealed to them better. And in due course, Betamax had to be discontinued. And we've had that problem in recent times, similar problem again, where the Blu-ray disc has been the winning DVD version in the market over a competitor there. More successful marketing, not necessarily the best version of the product. Final example of poor marketing is the one of Coca-Cola. We assume them to be a successful company, and they've been around many years, as I mentioned earlier. They introduced into the United States bottled water under the brand name Dasani. That was successful in the United States. They then wanted to come into Europe to be even more successful, and they chose the UK as the starting point. They introduced this bottled water into the UK market, but unfortunately it was a tremendous failure. It failed really in a matter of weeks because it was not pure water. It was water really from the tap. It was water that people could buy, having been put through a various sequence of cleansing processes to clean out all impurities, and then elements were added back in. In a taste test, it finished last. People bought it, did not like it, did not continue with it. But the majority did not buy it at all because they were prepared to pay more for pure bottled water from brands such as Evian. So that was a product that failed in the UK in a matter of weeks, and of course it cost that company many, many millions of pounds in failure. Okay, I'm going to mention customer service. I mentioned that earlier on. It could be considered really within the marketing mix of elements. Customer service, recognition of the need to gain and retain a customer. Retaining contact with a customer after they have bought the product or service. For example, the French company that manufactures Peugeot cars and Citroën cars, they did the very simple thing. They contact their customers, those who bought new cars from them. They contact them by sending them a birthday card every year and indeed a Christmas card every year. They do this because they want to remain in contact with that customer, that consumer, through until they are next in the market to buy a new car. And of course the company doesn't know when that will be. Will it be 1 year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, 4 years' time? But they want to remain in contact with these consumers in the intervening years through until they are next in the market to buy a new car. I'm going to finish now on a case study, and the case study is under the name The King of Shaves. The King of Shaves. This company was started in 1993 by a man called Will King. Quite simply, he wanted a product that was innovative in the shaving market. He designed a superior product. This was a razor that was kinder to the skin. However, he had a real battle on his hands because there were two giants in the market, two giant companies. One was Gillette and the other was Wilkinson Sword. He realised he had a real problem, and this problem was what's called lack of awareness. How would people know of his product even though he was convinced it was superior to those already on the market? How could he overcome this problem? He decided to take his product out onto the road. He was going to tour around the UK and allow people to try the product for themselves, totally free, to actually have a free shave using his newly designed product to test for themselves that it was better than those that already existed on the market. He called this the Battle Bus Campaign. He took over a bus, he equipped it, and he drove that bus round the country and stopped off at various towns and cities to enable people to shave themselves, to prove to themselves it was a superior product. This approach was highly successful, gained a lot of public relations opportunities, and he then introduced publicity online using YouTube and also involving the use of blogging. Tremendous awareness was achieved by this, and the product has become a resounding success. He now has a range of products, that's razors and accompanying products such as creams. And now his product can be bought in many, many places in the UK, many retail outlets such as Boots, Harrods, Lloyd's Pharmacies, Morrison's, Sainsbury's, Superdrug, Tesco and Waitrose. So, an amazing success. Thank you.